Hi everybody, I'm going to be teaching you today how to make this field of wheat crochet pattern. And as you can see here, we use puff stitches that are on a diagonal angle. So basically what's involved here is doing a crossover, and I'll show you how to do that stitch. Three of the main stitches that everybody needs to learn to make this is the initial diagonal puff stitch, because it has a framing double crochet in front of it, then the middle diagonal puff stitches, and then the final diagonal puff stitch, which also ends with a double crochet which is built into it. So and the other special thing about these diagonal puff stitches is that they have a hitch which seals them off. I'll show you how to do that. Another thing about these stitches, these puff stitches, is that they cross over another stitch. That's what creates the diagonal, and they also have a hitch at the top which seals them off. I'll explain what I mean by that as we go through making these stitches. Okay. So I just have a teaching swatch here. So all I've done is I've done a foundation chain, and then I have single crocheted in the back bumps, and I just have a few more to do here. I like to go into the back bumps because it gives a really nice finished edge to the crocheted piece. So basically the top of it looks the same as the bottom, just the chains go in the opposite direction. Okay, another little extra tip here. When I make my slip knot, I don't tighten it up very much because I don't like a knot sticking out the end, particularly when I work with cotton or linen. This happens to be an acrylic that's really tightly spun. So I undo the slip knot. One time I just pull the tail through one of the loops, and then I can tighten things up, and then there's no knot. It's very invisible, and it's still secure. It doesn't come undone. Okay, so let's do an initial diagonal puff stitch. So I only chain 2, and that does not count as a stitch. And then I'm going to do a double crochet. Okay, so that sets up the beginning diagonal puff stitch. Okay, so like I mentioned before, the puff stitch is the diagonal puff stitch crosses across another stitch. So I'm going to show you how to do that first. So you basically are going to do an open double crochet. So I'm going to skip 2 stitches and go in the third from the previous stitch. And here's the important part. You're going to lift that loop that you draw through the stitch to the height of the double crochet that you have over at the beginning. Okay, then you're going to yarn over and pull through 2. So that creates a long bundle of yarn, and it's basically a diagonal open double crochet. All right. So just to review a little bit here, we have we have put a double crochet in the first stitch, skipped 2, and then we have stretched a double crochet all the way over diagonal, or lifted it. But we haven't quite finished it off, and that's fine. We need to leave that unworked for now. Okay, so then we're going to be working back into that first stitch at the bottom of that first double crochet. So you're going to yarn over, go into that hole, yarn over and pull up a loop. Very important here, stretch that almost to the length of a treble stitch, or maybe even a double treble. Put your finger on it, yarn over, and return to the exact same insertion spot, yarn over, pull up a loop, and stretch it out. And do that 2 more times in the same stitch. Okay, it's very important to pull long strands out. That's what creates the diagonal puff. Okay, so here is the hitch. So the strand that's going to the ball of yarn that's in my left hand, I'm going to pinch that strand, yarn over, and then I'm going to rotate the head of the hook, tuck the chin under, and pull through all the stitches. But my fingers here are still pinching this strand. I'm going to insert the hook under that strand, yarn over, and pull through both strands on the hook, and that's the hitch, and that secures the diagonal puff stitch. Okay, so there you can see the double crochet and the diagonal puff stitch, and you can't see the diagonal half completed double crochet that's inside the puff stitch. Alright, so that's one diagonal puff stitch done. This is where the foot of the first stretched double crochet is. It's inserted in this stitch. So we're going to begin here, skip 2, and make another stretched double crochet here. First I'm going to chain 1 to separate one diagonal puff stitch from the next, and feel free to make a little bit of a looser chain there. Okay, this stitch is all about staying relaxed and keeping things loose. So I'm going in the third stitch over, lengthening out the yarn that I pulled up, yarning over, and pulling through 2. So there's my unfinished stretched double crochet. Then I have to find the insertion point that I'm going to work the puff in, and it's back here. You can see that the previous stretched double crochet is kind of opening that hole and pulling things open, and that's where the next 4 movements of the puff stitch are going to go. So I'm going to yarn over, go into that spot, yarn over, pull up a loop, and stretch. Yarn over, pull up a loop, and stretch 2. Yarn over, insert same spot, yarn over, and stretch. Yarn over, insert in the same spot, yarn over, pull up a loop, and stretch. So that's 4. So you're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 strands on the hook. Okay, now to make the hitch. So I'm going to pinch the yarn. I kind of pinch it against the working fabric a little bit. Yarn over and pull through everything. Go under that hitch, yarn over, and pull through everything. And I'm going to chain 1 a little bit loosely. Okay, so you can see the diagonal puffs are starting to take shape. Next one, again, this is where I worked the last stretched double crochet. I'm going to skip 2 and put a stretched double crochet into here. Okay, if you are a yanker, and a yanker is a crocheter who does this. So let's say that you're just making the average double crochet stitch. So you yarn over, insert, pull up and tighten, pull up and tighten. So if you're the type of crocheter that after every movement you tighten a little bit, that's called being a yanker. This really affects stitch size, mostly height, and will affect your gauge if you're trying to get the gauge of a designer who isn't a yanker. You're going to have a hard time getting the same height of double crochets. So the Wheatfield's pattern is really good for developing lifted stitches. So if you are a lifter, this will be easy for you. So a lifter takes up that first strand through the fabric and lengthens it before making a double crochet, or pretty much any stitch. So a lifter has taller double crochet stitches than a yanker. So you can see that the stitch is looser and it's also taller. So if you are a lifter, this stitch is going to be a lot easier for you. If you're not a lifter, you're going to just have to work at relaxing the yarn as it feeds through your hand so that you can stretch it quite a ways away. Another thing that might affect your frustration levels or your success with this stitch is how you hold the hook. So I hold the hook like this. I can't remember if this is the knife hold or the pencil hold. I think it's the knife hold. The knife hold allows you to have this index finger serve as a brake to hold the loops on the hook, and then that way they don't slip off. If you are this type of a crocheter and hold your hook like this, which I think it's called the pencil hold, although I don't quite hold my pencil like this either, so I'm not sure why it's called that. But that's just me. Okay, so if I need to do a yarn over and then I need to stretch my double crochet, for me this is very awkward because now I have to move my hand a lot closer to my other hand in order to grab the yarn properly. But that's just me. If you're used to being a pencil holder, this won't be as much of a struggle as it is for me. Okay, so I need to stretch that double crochet open. Okay, now the other thing for me as a knife holder, the pencil hold, I don't have a free finger to work as a brake except this one. And I struggle because I have to let go and grab each time. So let's watch me try and do a puff stitch with a pencil hold. So I need to tuck the yarn in under my middle finger. Okay, so there I have 9 stitches, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through everything. Oh, I forgot to do the hitch. Let me just go back. Okay, so the hitch is to pinch that there, yarn over, pull through everything, and then I'm going to go under that strand of yarn, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, so well, as you can see, it's a mess. It's uneven, my strands aren't the same, probably because it's awkward for me to do pencil hold, so my tension is going to be off. So if you are a pencil holder and you have good tension, then you should be fine. If you struggle with even tension, then maybe a knife hold would work better. All right, so now I'm just going to do the closing or the final diagonal puff stitch. And this kind of frames the far edge of the blanket or the piece that you're working on. Okay, so I'm going to chain 1. Then I'm going to reach out and stretch past 2 stitches into the 3rd, open that up loose, and just yarn over and pull through 2. Now I'm going to cross over and do 4 back into this first stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, the difference between a normal diagonal puff stitch and this final one is that I need to build in a double crochet into the stitch. So first I'm going to do a hitch. So I'm going to pinch the yarn, and instead of pulling it through 9 strands, I'm just going to pull it through those 8 and leave 2 loops on the hook. Then I'm going to go under that hitch, pull it through, and just pull it through the first one, so I still have 2. Now I'm going to do a double crochet in that same stitch as the stretched double crochet that I used for this puff stitch. So yarn over. This time I'm not going to lift it up. I'm going to leave it closer to the original stitch. Yarn over, pull through 2, and yarn over, pull through all 3 strands. And what that accomplishes is it frames, this side had the double crochet to frame it here, and now I'm going to frame one here. I didn't count my foundation chain properly, so we're just going to ignore that a little bit, pretend it's not there. Okay, so now I'm ready to turn my work and go back. So I'm going to chain 2 and work a double crochet right there into the stitch at the bottom. But I'm also, so that would be the top of that stitch. I'm going to go lower than that and go into where I worked the hitch, so it's under 4 strands, and I'm making my first double crochet there. Okay, so that sets things up neatly to go in the opposite direction. Okay, so now we have to practice where we work the puff stitches on top of other puff stitches. Okay, so here is my puff stitch. You can see the diagonal strands, and they all feed into these 2 strands at the top of the stitch. So regardless of which side of the puff stitch you look at, there's all the diagonal strands, and they're all feeding into those 2 strands at the top of the stitch. And that is where we're going to work all of our puff stitches, and also our stretched double crochets. Okay, so I am going to do a stretched double crochet in the top of this puff stitch. So lift and yarn over, pull through 2 and stop at that point. Then I need to do 4 lifts of yarn into this first stitch, because this is going to be the diagonal puff. So crossing over in front, I yarned over already. I'm going to go through 1, lift and lift far, 2, lift far, 3. So it's a good idea to do a practice swatch before making an actual project, because you want to get good at having even diagonal strands here. Okay, hitch, I'm going to grab this yarn, pinch it, yarn through everything, go under the hitch, yarn over, and pull through both strands. Okay, so now I've made another diagonal puff, and it's going in the opposite direction. Okay, so chain 1 loosely, yarn over. This is the stitch where we're going to be working the puff, so I need to move to the next puff to do a stretched double crochet. So lift that up and stretch it out, yarn over and pull through 2 and stop at that point. Cross over in front, 1, 2, 3, all in the same spot, 4. Okay, make the hitch by pinching the yarn, yarn over and pull through everything, go under the hitch, yarn over and pull through 2. Okay, so there's 2 diagonal puff stitches. All right, so as you notice here, I have a buoyed hook, or the type of crochet hook with a buoyed head, because it's rounded off and tapered, and the chin is tapered as well. I also have an inline hook, or a Susan Bates head, some people call it, and you notice how there's a flat surface underneath the chin of the hook, and the chin is kind of sharp and edgy. I cannot use this for the life of me if I'm doing a puff stitch, because the corners catch. So if your corners catch when you try to pull through all 9 strands, that might be the reason for you too. So I'm going to go in here and stretch and open up and then pull through 2. Okay, so now I'm going to put 4 open half doubles, which is what makes the puff, into this stitch here by my thumbnail. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I'm going to make a hitch. So this is where, for me, I'm lucky it didn't snag, but usually I snag on one of those strands inside that big bulk of the puff stitch. So what do you know? When I want to demonstrate it for you, it works fine. Okay, and now I'd like to show you some other things that might be frustrating your progress. And that is how you feed the yarn through your fingers. So I just have a very minimal wrap around my pinky to serve as a break, and then I go through my middle finger and my index finger so that the yarn easily slides through my fingers. If you are the type of crocheter that does multiple twists around your pinky or multiple twists around your index or middle finger, you're going to be quite frustrated. So some people crochet like this with lots of loops on the finger to create this tension. Okay, so I have to let go of a strand to make my double crochet, and things are popping off all over the place. Okay, I'm going to go into that last stitch and make my stretched double crochet. Then I'm going to cross over. So this is where, for me, it's really hard if I have all this yarn wrapped around my index finger to create an even tension. 3, 4. So my tension is going to be very uneven here. I'm going to be struggling to pull up the 8 strands. So I have to allow a yarn feeding system that's a little bit different. Oh, I didn't make that final one properly. The other possibility is that you are a yarn winder around the hook, so you kind of use your whole hand to wrap things around in some way or another. That also might be a little bit of a struggle, but maybe not too hard. I'm just going to make my stretched double crochet. So if you are a winder, I'm not sure how people do it, where they hold on to the fabric and yet wind. Maybe if you let go of this fabric, that's what happens. I don't know. We'll have to see. I'd love for you to write in with any questions. Of course, you can leave comments here on the YouTube channel, but also I have a Facebook group that I share with Rebecca, and it's called Lifelong Crochet. So feel free to join the group. There are some questions, 3 questions to answer at the beginning to get into the group. But that's just to make sure that you are a real crocheter, that you're legit. So do that. In the group, you can post your progress and any questions, and then either Rebecca or I can answer you. All right, so I'm going to try to go back here to this last one. Okay, so I'm going to go in and pull up a loop. 3, 4. Oh no, that's only 1, 2, yeah, that's 4. Okay, so then I'm going to make the hitch, but only go up through 8 stitches. And then I'm going to add a double crochet in the end here, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through everything on the hook to wrap things up. Okay, so the next video will be how to change colors and do the full pattern that you see here in this swatch. Thanks for watching.